If you were king for a day and you could institute one or two simple but very significant reforms within just law enforcement agencies across Louisiana, what would they be?
Remove the good old boy system and the politics in the law enforcement of I'm related to this person, I know this person's my cousin or my best friend, this person donated to my campaign, so you're gonna treat them better. And I am the law enforcement officer who does one thing. I treat everyone the same. Everyone gets the same dignity and respect and the privilege of being treated like a human and do the right thing. I don't care who, and this is one of my unpopular statements. I don't care who you are, who you're related to, who you donated to, who your best friend is. I'm going to treat you fair. I'm going to treat everybody fair. You know, I remember when I first took over Vice as a sergeant in charge of the Vice unit for Bossier Police Department, they literally, some bar owners literally took up a petition to have me removed from Vice because according to them, what they told the mayor and the police chief at the time was I was on a holy war to shut down the bar scene. Well, I wasn't shutting down the bar scene. I was enacting the laws that should have been enacted to everyone equally. But because they were friends with people, because they were relatives of people, and they have grown up with people, they thought they should receive different treatment and shouldn't have the same laws enforced. I don't care who they are. I'm going to enforce the law the same from everybody.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again on the State of Freedom.
The State of Freedom is a listener-supported podcast. We're committed to pursuing the truth about policymaking, decisions, and situations in Louisiana and at the national level that stand to impact our freedoms.
Please become a monthly supporter of the State of Freedom at freedomstate.us as we continue to expand the voice of liberty across Louisiana and beyond.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the State of Freedom. It's Tuesday, August 19th at 10 a.m. Central, and I'm Danielle Walker, joined by my good friend and co-host, Chris Alexander. We are coming to you live on Voice of the People USA TV and radio network on Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook. Wherever you are watching, please give us a like, give us a thumbs up, and share it. Comment in the chat. It helps us out with the algorithms, and we will take all the help we can get. Well, joining us today is Sammy Wyatt. Dr. Wyatt is a Navy veteran and a candidate for U.S. Senate. He's one of the good men who've stood up to try and unseat the incredibly unpopular Senator Bill Cassidy. Before we get into the conversation with Dr. Wyatt, let me put our first ad up. The secret to losing weight 2 times faster has gone viral. See the transformations hundreds of thousands of men, women, and teens are experiencing around the world with the Slender Eyes drops. These homeopathic hormone-balancing drops are proven to control appetite, support thyroid function, improve energy, boost mood, and increase metabolic rate. To learn more about the drops or other incredible natural wellness and lifestyle products, email me at danielle@freedomstate.us or visit the Shop Our Partners page at freedomstate.us. Awesome. Well, thank you and welcome, Dr. Sammy Wyatt. We always start out the show with a scripture reading, so let me do that now, but we wanted you to be a part of it. The scripture for today is Psalm chapter 118, verses 14 through 17. It says, Lord, you are my true strength and my glory song, my champion, my savior. The joyful songs I now sing will be sung again in the hearts and homes of all your lovers. My loud shouts of victory will echo throughout the land, for Yahweh's right hand conquers valiantly. The right hand of Yahweh exalts. The right hand of Yahweh will never fail. You will not let them kill me, but I will live to tell the world what the Lord has done for me. And don't you know that every victory we have belongs to the Lord and is because of the Lord? And as we stay connected to the Lord and live independent on Him, as we live in expectation of His goodness and rely on Him as our strength, He will come through for us. The battles we face are not ours to fight alone. They are the Lord's. The Lord, David says, is our champion defender. He fights for us. And when we call on Him, as David did, He's near and he moves powerfully on our behalf. So my prayer for us this morning is that our lives are ones that display the goodness, the faithfulness, and the overwhelming victory of our God. Chris, you're still on mute, huh?
Sorry about that. And your prayer this morning, Danielle, reminds me of another psalm that's similar, but David is in a very, very difficult position. And he's like, Lord, you have to help me. How am I gonna extol you from the grave? He said, how can I possibly be a witness to all the great things you can do when I'm lying flat on my back or lying face down in the mud? You gotta help me.
That's right.
And he always does, as you said, no matter what the task is in front of us, he is always faithful. And speaking of someone, Danielle, who has a great task in front of him, is Dr. Sammy Wyatt, as you said, who is going to spend a few minutes with us this morning, introducing himself to our listeners and telling us a little bit about his background. Dr. Wyatt, thank you for joining us today, sir.
Thank you both for allowing me this opportunity to speak to your audience and to the citizens of Louisiana. That's what I'm here for. I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for the people of Louisiana so we can help bring some structure back to our state and some truth, honesty, ethics, and integrity and turn our state around.
One of the things that strikes me about you, Dr. Wyatt, is that you do come across as someone who is just absolutely void of anything other than speaking straight from the heart. Very little pretense. I noticed that you really do not have the normal surface polish necessarily of a seasoned politician. You're refined, you're very gracious, and I mean that as a compliment.
Thank
And I
you.
think that comes across as probably pretty refreshing to Louisiana citizens. But let me ask you this: what made you get into politics? I know it's not your background. You are very well educated. You have a PhD. But tell us a little bit about your background, and then what made you to make a decision of this magnitude?
Well, what made me decide to get into it? I started considering it back when President Trump, during his first election, and the lawfare and the warfare that went against him, how all the Republican Party was turning against him, how he was standing up for right and for justice and to do the right thing to help turn our country around, and to see how they attacked him. And then when he ran, of course, the election in 2020, I do not agree that that election was reported truthfully. I think it was taken. I do not, I remember going to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning watching the state of Georgia. And, Georgia, President Trump was way ahead in Georgia. And I got back up the next morning, he's way behind. And then you see videos of them just walking boxes and boxes of ballots in and stuff like that. And so that was bad. And then when he tried to run this time, and when they came after him with full force of law, what I
Everything they had. Everything they had. Yeah.
Everything they had. So people sitting on the judicial bench who are legislating as their own, making their own decisions instead of following law, interpreting law as their own instead of making it to where it was supposed to be read and how it was supposed to be interpreted, instead of doing the will of the people, doing their own will. And I'm talking about Republicans, Democrats. I'm talking about them trying to kill the man twice. Just, I can't imagine the billions of dollars that he's lost financially trying to serve our country, much less he's given up a salary, don't even serve as president for a salary. But, the amount of loss he's taken just to serve us is just, and I was done. And I'm saying, I am going to run for this office. Dr. Cassidy voted against him and tried to come out against him many times and did come out against him, impeaching, has done many things going against President Trump, even though he's trying to act like he's on the same side now. I don't believe him. So that's what made me get in the race. And any American who really, truly feels that this is the best country would want to get in this race and fight for the country. So that's what made me get in the race. Now, my background is I was born and raised in Louisiana. I'm born and raised in Shreveport. Went into the military after I graduated high school, went to the United States Navy, served in my term in the United States Navy. Once I got out, I became a welder at Beard Industries for about 13 months, which was basically the hiring process to get into law enforcement. It took me that long to get into law enforcement. But I was a welder. My dad had taught me how to weld on the farm many years ago, and then I took it in high school. Back when in high school you had shop and all these other things, you could learn a manual trade.
Mm-hmm. Useful.
Exactly, useful things instead of basket weaving.
Yeah, there you go. But your dream was to get in your law enforcement.
It was. I was raised around police officers with the Shreveport Police Department, DeSoto Parish Sheriff's Office, Bossier Police. So that was my dream: come out of the Navy, get into law enforcement. And I raised a family, wife, kids, and when I got on the Bossier City Police Department, well, first I spent about a little over a year with Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office, and I was told if you're going to get into law enforcement, make sure you get into something that has civil service protection. So that's why I went to Bossier City Police Department at the time. During my career with Bossier Police, I served on patrol. I served in criminal investigations, special investigations. 5.5 years on the Special Weapons and Tactics team. Served in doing public information with Mark Natale. He was the main PIO, but I would back him up, and which ended up being a lot for 9 years. And then I was in charge of Crime Stoppers for 9 years. And as you guys know, and your listeners know, when you're law enforcement, you have many different hats. You just don't have the ability, the financial resource to go and hire somebody just to stay in one position. You have
Yeah,
to do many hats.
especially in a smaller department.
Oh, definitely, especially in a smaller department. You know, uh, when I was 30 years old, I went back to school, which was in 2000, and I earned my associates in criminal justice from Bossier Parish Community College. I went on and to LSUS and completed my bachelor's in criminal justice from LSUS in
It's
Shreveport.
so interesting, Dr. Wyatt, and I just have to say this. We have two things in common already. I'm from Shreveport, and I am a graduate of LSU Shreveport. So I didn't
Well,
even know that. That's really,
yeah.
really great.
Well, thank you. It was always a dream of mine. I didn't think I would be able to achieve it, was to go to LSU Baton Rouge. It's amazing how the Lord works. You never know what your future holds. I don't come from a lot of money. I had the best parents in the world, the best upbringing in the world. We didn't have a lot of money, but my dad and my mother both gave me love. Nothing but love. Taught me how to worship God. Taught me who God was, who Jesus was, how the Trinity works. Taught me everything about the Lord. And, I can't ask for anything but because that is everything. I don't care how much money someone has. I don't care what possessions they have. That is what. We struggled sometimes, especially I remember during the early 80s when the oil industry fell out. And
Hmm.
my dad was in construction, and it was a really tough time. But I went back to school, earned my bachelor's, and then after I earned my bachelor's degree, I took a little time off because my mother had passed a few years ago, back in 2003 at 58 years old. So I lost her. And I went back to Centenary College of Louisiana here in Shreveport, and I earned my master's in business administration. And I did all of that while working full time, having kids, my wife. We raised a family. And then my last few years on the police department, I was working in special investigations, which was vice, street crimes type stuff, and all that lovely environment. And I,
Yeah,
re-
I bet so.
I remember telling the chief of police at the time, I said, "You want me to do vice? I'm on TV everywhere with Crime Stoppers and PIO type stuff, and plus my lifestyle was not. I mean, that's a whole different lifestyle. Luckily
You bet.
it wasn't the full blown undercover type stuff that narcotics officers have to do, because a lot of people did know me. I remember being in bars and doing investigations in bars, and these people. I literally had one guy came up to me, "Do you remember me?" I said, "No, sir." And he goes, "Well, you put me in prison for child molestation," and he had literally just got out of prison after
Wow.
serving. Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
dangerous deal. What is the most dangerous situation that you've been in that whenever you think about your career as a police officer, the most dangerous situation that you've been in, or
Well,
if there's one?
oh Lord, I mean, we've had shooting situations. I luckily, thank God, I've never had to fire my weapon, but we've responded to shooting situations, hostage situations, barricaded suspects, narcotics raids. We've had numerous. I mean, I've done so many narcotics raids when I was on the SWAT team, where people were literally trying to grab guns off of their bedside tables, off of their. There was one guy that he had a water bed, I believe, and he was trying to get a gun off a water bed to shoot at us. And I've had people come at me with knives. Thank God I did not have to pull the trigger, convince them to touch it. And you have a very, very small window of error there to get somebody to drop a knife.
What
I've
is your
had
thought, Dr. Wyatt, on a couple of things pop out here. What is your thought on, because this has been an issue in Louisiana and it very well could become an issue on the federal level as well, on qualified immunity? There was an effort here in Louisiana to diminish or do away with qualified immunity, which, as you know, gives officers some breathing room in a situation where the circumstances are extremely exigent and they have to make very quick decisions. So they get some leeway as far as civil liability in terms of how they respond, even if they don't respond perfectly. If they respond in a way that's reasonable based on what they knew in the moment. I'm assuming that you support the continuation of qualified immunity for law enforcement officers.
I do support it. I stand strong in support of it. And what the general public, most general public, don't understand, qualified immunity does not give you the opportunity to go out and commit crimes and do what's wrong. It gives you, just like I have a cell phone here, and if somebody's coming at me and they're running at me and they point that cell phone at me like this, in the split of a second, I may think it's a gun. They're taking the posture like it's a gun. We told them to drop the weapon, if we had the time, and we have to shoot that person for safety. And come to find out, it's a cell phone. It could be a low light situation. It could be a surprise attack or anything, but look like you're actually fixing to be shot at. You have no choice but to defend yourself and defend those around you, defend the public. And come to find out after the investigation, it was a toy gun, or it was a handgun, or it was a cell phone, or something like that. So qualified immunity protects those people because every action led that officer to believe that it was a dangerous, life-threatening, imminent situation to where you had to take that action to protect yourself and others. It does not allow any law enforcement officer to go out and commit crimes or go against policy, procedure, and law. And that's what everyone needs to understand. We've got to have qualified immunity to protect our officers, to give them the ability to serve and protect the public. If we take that away, we expose them to so much danger, so much harm, not only individually at that moment, but also financially later in time, especially with the court system.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I tend to agree with that. One more little question here before we move on, because you said something else earlier. When you first got into law enforcement, you wanted to find an agency that had civil service protection. There was a bill in this past session that would have authorized the legislature to reclassify a number of categories of civil service employees in order to make managing those employees more flexible and allow them to be dealt with in ways that right now they really can't be because of the civil service protections. Isn't there another side to that? Do you think that the civil service protections seem, at least this is the criticism of the current system, Dr. Wyatt, that it sort of insulates civil service employees from appropriate discipline and appropriate management, even when it's needed? What are your thoughts on that?
And I've heard that a lot, even in my current position. But it does not do that, because if you're following civil service law, whether it's municipal police civil service law, whether it's Louisiana state civil service law, there are steps and procedures you have to take. And progressive disciplinary action when you can, when necessary and when needed, when appropriate. But you could also terminate somebody if they do something egregious and they violate something really bad. They do something really bad. You can go straight to termination. It's all about just following the process and procedure. We have got to. I'm all about civil service protection, because just like in some sheriff's offices, and it's not all of them, but there are some bad apples. Some, and not just in Louisiana, but United States wide, to where if you vote the wrong way, if you support the wrong person, if your opinion is known, if a new boss comes in and you have a different supervisor who has different friends or different obligations to friends, it makes it political, just like in a political race of political appointees. Then they're going to remove people without any just cause. Whether it's civil service or not, you need to have just cause to do whatever action you're planning on taking.
And what you just said is really the whole rationale and behind the civil service infrastructure that we have now to begin with. Every new administration comes in and everybody gets kicked out and all the new people come in. And there's very little long-term job security. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Exactly. It's all about job security and protecting those who, they dedicated their lives to these employment agencies. And the sad thing is that municipal police in the state of Louisiana, even they've reduced the amount of civil service protection. Used to, you had to have seniority, so much time on the job. 10 years or so to even become a police chief. Now you don't even have to have, certain seniority to become a deputy chief of police. They can just appoint, if you're a sergeant, which varies greatly in different departments. If you have a big department, it can take you 25 years to become a sergeant, depending on what department you're in. In a small department, you can be a sergeant in 2 years, depending on where you're at, and so now they've removed the civil service requirement for those people to have time in service to be a deputy chief of police. So now if somebody gets made a chief of police under civil service protection, they can appoint their own deputy chiefs as long as they're a sergeant in local law enforcement,
Wow.
which goes ahead of everybody who's been there. The institutional knowledge, the training, the education, knowing the city, working with the city, those people need to have they need to have connections to be able to truly represent people.
Dr. Wyatt, give us a little more insight into you, Sammy Wyatt, the man. Would you tell us a little bit about some defining moments in your life that you feel have set you up or put you in a position to run right now?
I have been raised, and like I said, I wasn't raised with a lot of money. My parents didn't have a lot of money, but my parents gave me everything for love. That was everything. Raised me in church. The thing defining moments is loss. That's pretty much what defined me and my character. The upbringing my father and my mother taught me, and how to raise and treat people, treat them with respect. You can have difference of opinions, but you don't have to destroy anyone. Be respectful. Help somebody up who has fallen down and who's in need. Help them up. That's not a handout. It's a help up. Help them succeed. Help them be successful.
Yeah.
When I was 7 years old, 6.5 years old, my Wyatt grandfather passed away. That was a major turning point in my life. I saw my daddy go through that, and I've seen my uncles pass, and my dad and my mother go through that. And the strength, now that I'll be 54, I'll be 55 this year. I look back to how young my mother and father were going through all of that, and how they kept steadfast and kept faith in the Lord. And no matter what happened, they never got away from him. Were they perfect people? Of course not. None of us are perfect. I'm not perfect by any means. I've made my errors, just like every other human being has. But I know how. I know where my faith is laid. I know my faith is in the Lord Jesus Christ and God. I know to keep my faith and my sight on him, no matter what I'm going through, the challenges I'm going through, and always do the right thing. And I tell this to everybody. I'm going to do the right thing, whether it's popular or unpopular. I'm going to do the right thing. You may not like what I have to say, but it's going to be the truth. I'm not going to lie to you. Just like in this is an election. I'm not going to say one thing to get elected and do another thing once I get elected. I'm just going to tell the truth. Now that offends a lot of people, but and I'm sorry that you're offended by it, but it's the truth. So I can go back. I've had a lot, there's been a lot of tragedies. I say tragedy, it's normal life of passing of loved ones that's really set me on the trajectory, especially when my mother passed away at 58, and that was in 2003. Found my father in 2018. He passed away. I tried to call him from Baton Rouge one day because I was working as director of internal audit for LSU A&M, and before I transferred up here to Shreveport, and I couldn't get him on the phone, so I left. And as soon as I left LSU Baton Rouge, he passed away, and I found him in his house in Shreveport, laying on the floor in the bathroom. And so
You had no idea. You had no idea what you were walking into when you got there.
I had talked to him the night before. It was my son's high school graduation at Dutchtown, down in by Geismar, Louisiana, down in Ascension Parish. And he was sounding bad. And I said, Daddy, let me come and take you to the hospital. Please let me come take you to the hospital. He said, no, don't, I'll be okay. I said, well, I'm coming tomorrow. I will be there tomorrow. I had no idea it was that bad.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so when I tried to call him early in the morning, I couldn't get him on the phone. And I had a meeting that I was going to, and I kept trying to say, well, maybe he's just sleeping in. And then once I got through with the meeting and I couldn't get him on the phone, then I headed to Shreveport. And they said about the time I was leaving Shreveport is when he passed. And I've worked a lot of deaths in my career, suicide, homicide, children. But as you know, when it's a loved one, it's a whole different ball game. You try to keep a disconnect between the police officer and the person you're having to investigate. You've got to keep some distance. But when it's your own loved one, it's a whole different ball game.
It's hard with family.
It is hard. It's hard. And, unfortunately, I'll never forget before I went to LSU Baton Rouge, it was after I retired complete. Matter of fact, it was I took early retirement from law enforcement 2009, 2010, 2011. A friend of mine who lived across the street from me in Bossier was a retired Shreveport police officer. He was bad diabetic, and he had lost one leg, and they just told him he was fixing to lose another. He had been through kidney transplants, and he committed suicide. And I was outside. His wife came running out and asked me for help, and I went in, and he had just shot himself in the head. So, yeah.
And Dr. Sammy, y'all were close, obviously.
We were close friends. We were close friends. I knew he was struggling. He had turned to drinking, unfortunately, to help suppress the emotions and the feelings, and he felt like a burden on his wife. And a lot of law enforcement, and especially back in the what I say the old days, they took it to heart, and they didn't want to be a burden on anyone, or some tragedy happened, or they dealt with something they couldn't deal with, and they would turn to alcoholism, some type of drug abuse, whether it be prescription or otherwise, and he had turned to alcohol. And, what's bad is he was a man of faith. He was a man of God, and he knew we would talk about God all the time at his house. And he was scared that if they took his other leg, he was going to be such a burden to his wife. And he told her, come to find out, he had told her that morning, I'm not going to be a burden on you any longer. Well, she didn't think anything about it, and he went into an office and committed suicide. And unfortunately, the suicide rate amongst law enforcement officers is pretty high,
Yeah.
around the nation.
Yeah. Dr. Wyatt, some of the things that you've seen, it's obvious that you're just touching on the very surface of some of the things that you've seen in your career as a law enforcement officer. I'm sure some of it has just been horrid,
Mm-hmm.
devastating. How do you maintain your humanity, or did you maintain your humanity and your sanity when day in, day out, you're seeing things that would make most people curl up in the fetal position and hide under their bed for months? What was it that kept you moving there and kept you optimistic and hopeful?
The ultimate thing was keeping my faith in God and going to church, talking to my pastor, confiding in him, and just letting it out. And then you talk to your wife, you talk to your spouse, you talk to the other brother and sister law enforcement officers who's already been through that, who's going through it as well. And y'all have basically it's a sit around at IHOP, debrief, drink a cup of coffee, eat your pancake, and just talk about it, get it out. The worst thing any law enforcement officer can do is hold it in and not talk about it, because we are all human. I've seen, like I said, homicides of children. I've worked homicides of children, rape, incest, molestation of children, battered children, just to, gosh, unbelievable. The sex crimes of children, the pornography of children, stuff that I would have never thought in my life I would see.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like I'm listening to you here and I'm thinking to myself on a slightly lighter note, I'm thinking everything that you've been through as a law enforcement officer, you've been shot at, you've seen horrible things in the course of trying to be a good law enforcement officer and serve the community. It's almost like what could possibly be thrown at you in a U.S. Senate race that even compares with some of the things that you've seen in your life. So maybe it was good preparation.
Well, thank God I haven't personally been shot at. I have responded to shootings
Yeah.
to where they were shooting at other people, and we've been able to take it without we've been able to disarm people. And thank the Lord, I can say, but that I've never had to take anyone's life. I was willing to do so in protection of others. But even talking about all of the horror stuff we've seen, one of the worst things about law enforcement, and every single police officer, every single fireman, every single public servant who hears this will know it. I'm telling the truth. One of the worst things we deal with are the politics on the inside, the good old boy system.
Wow, you must be you must be reading my mind here, Dr. White, because I was just about to ask you if you were king for a day and you could institute one or two simple but very significant reforms within, just law enforcement agencies across Louisiana, what would they be?
Remove the good old boy system and the politics in law enforcement of I'm related to this person, I know this person's my cousin or my best friend, this person donated to my campaign, so you're gonna treat them better. And I am the law enforcement officer who does one thing: I treat everyone the same. Everyone gets the same dignity and respect and the privilege of being treated like a human and do the right thing. I don't care who, and this is one of my unpopular statements. I don't care who you are, who you're related to, who you donated to, who your best friend is. I'm going to treat you fair. I'm going to treat everybody fair. I remember when I first took over Vice as a sergeant in charge of the Vice unit for Bossier Police Department, some bar owners literally took up a petition to have me removed from Vice because, according to them, what they told the mayor and the police chief at the time was I was on a holy war to shut down the bar scene. Well, I wasn't shutting down the bar scene. I was enacting the laws that should have been enacted to everyone equally. But because they were friends with people, because they were relatives of people, and they have grown up with people, they thought they should receive different treatment and shouldn't have the same laws enforced. I don't care who they are. I'm going to enforce the laws the same from everybody.
You're talking about situations here, Dr. Wyatt, where, because I've seen this, and I can tell you, I'm not going to name any names, but I've absolutely seen law enforcement agencies, ATF, that are very selective in the commercial establishments that they choose to go into, that they choose to check, and that they choose to monitor. And some they are always on, and then some they never touch. And I've always thought that was a little bit, well, a lot unfair.
It is, because they will target, people will target a small business and they'll
Exactly.
they will go after the big business, and they'll leave them alone, but they'll target the small business to try to drive them out of the business. Is what it is, and that's all becomes of politics and relationships and stuff like that. And let me tell you, if there's something I despise, it is the good old boy system and the politics.
Well, it's unjust because you strike me as someone who is fundamentally very just. And it's
Right,
just the bottom line is what you're describing is just totally unjust.
right,
Well, and it
right.
extends far, far beyond law enforcement,
Well,
right? I
It
mean,
does.
come on,
It
the
does.
swamp is deep, far, and wide.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that's why I'm in this race, to help fix that, because we have already seen. Look, if you Mayor George Dement in Bossier City, God rest his soul, he always said one thing: if you always do what you've always done, you'll always be where you've always been. And as long, I've been out of Bossier City. I left in 2013 is when I moved out of Bossier City. The same politics are happening. The same people are controlling different things. It's just different faces.
We have two
And
good friends, Dr. Wyatt, Rex and Duke Lowry. Rex
yeah,
Moncrief and Duke Lowry. They host, I don't know if you've been on the show, but they host a Louisiana Watch and Bossier Watch. And let me
right.
tell you, I don't live up there anymore, but I can tell you now, based on what they say, and those guys are such great watchdogs. So from what I'm hearing, you're exactly right. Very little seems to have changed.
I knew Duke when he was on the fire department. He and I've known Rex for several years. We actually had a close friend that was his son was on the police department, and the close friend's son, and I got to know Rex that way many years ago. Great
Wonderful,
guys,
wonderful, wonderful guys.
right?
Very
Great
impressed with
guys.
them.
They will go after it.
Yeah, they will.
That's exactly why I'm in this race, because I want to change the future of Louisiana and the United States. We already know we have one candidate in the race who's already turned his back on President Trump and the agenda to make the United States better. We already know that. We
Bill
have
Cassidy,
another.
you got to
Yes,
name
go ahead.
names, sir.
Okay, okay, I'll name names. Okay, trust me, I'm not bashful about naming names. We have Bill Cassidy who's turned his back on President Trump and the agenda. And he's also literally just in March of this year, after saying, "Oh, I'm with Trump, I'm going to support Trump," he voted to not codify Doge, which is just exposing fraud, waste, and abuse. And that's just one of the most recent things he's done. So, he's not going to change his tone. He's going to do what he's always wanted to do. He's not representing the people, he's representing himself. We have, Blake. Blake got into the race late. Blake has represented the oil and gas industry, does represent the oil and gas industry. And I love the oil and gas industry. They are a major staple here in Louisiana. They are big for our economy, but I do not support at all the carbon capture sequestration. That is dangerous. It is deadly. It's going to kill your family, your crops, your fields. It will devalue your property when they put all that junk underneath the CO2 underneath your property. It's gonna devalue because you got to disclose that. And there's no imaginary line saying, okay, well, this person said they wanted to do it, so we're going to put it just under their property. It don't work that way. It goes under everybody's property, and then it can affect everybody's water aquifer to where it's going to affect the drinking water. That stuff is deadly. I use this. the example, okay, is I know CO2, we have it in our air. We have to have it for our plants and our trees, and we got to have it for life. It is part of the cycle of life. But go put your mouth on the tailpipe of a car and see how long you last. There's CO2 coming out of that. You're not going to be here much longer. Carbon capture, when it goes to put it in there, it's going to kill everything it touches. And we can't afford it to leak out. And unfortunately, Blake has voted time and time again to support carbon capture. I
What
mean,
about the
it's on his record.
carbon capture sequestration in and of itself seems to be
Right.
based on extraordinarily questionable science.
Definitely.
But apart from the merits of it itself, the issue of eminent domain,
Oh,
Dr. Wyatt, is probably the most troubling part of carbon capture sequestration in my mind. I mean, I
right.
think it's an assault on a fundamental foundational principle of private property. I'm assuming that you're 100% opposed to eminent domain for
I
this.
stand 100% opposed to eminent domain used for the benefit of making profit for the private industry, because that's all that is. These My dad, my mother, and father owned 40 acres of land in DeSoto Parish for a few years when I was a kid. We lived there for a few years when I was real little, and grew up. I grew up on the farm for a little while and enjoyed every bit of it. So under the eminent domain, these people could come in, take part of my father's property, and say, I don't care whether you want to sell it or not. I don't care whether you want this under your land or not. I don't care whether you want a pipeline across your land or not. We're going to do it. Let me tell you something. I will fight that, and excuse my language, till hell freezes over.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people wanting ice water down there right now. So I'm not going to give up to fighting that fight. These people have had generations and generations of land passed down, from their families, that their families worked and owned. But even if it's somebody who just went out and bought some property yesterday and just looking forward to building a life, they have the right to protect themselves and their land. And that is a foundation of the United States of America, for us to own property and build our life the way we see fit.
Yeah.
They should not have the right to come in and take our property from us. If
I
somebody
agree.
wants to sell the property, that's fine, but that's their decision.
And
It should never
one
be
thing
said.
that's been upsetting to me is the realization that even so, say you're against it and your neighbor is for it. Well, if the pipeline goes under your neighbor's property, yours is going to be devalued as well because you're part of sucking on that tailpipe when it blows.
100%. And I've seen it. When I first left law enforcement, I went to work for Chesapeake Energy uh, back in 2009. After I earned my MBA, I went to work for Chesapeake Energy. And I was doing the ethics and investigations, just like I've always done. Ethics, investigations, criminal investigations. Well, it wasn't no longer considered criminal. I'd refer it to the criminal agencies. I've seen wells blow out and kill people. I've seen, the dangers of this stuff. And just like you said, when that well blows out or that pipeline blows out, it's not staying within that imaginary property line. It's going to go over everyone. So we don't need someone we can't allow this to happen. We just
Yeah. You know, Thomas Jefferson said that the only legitimate function of government is to prevent the direct infringement by one individual against the life, liberty, or property of another individual. And if it doesn't involve that, the government really has no place in it. And what Danielle just described
Mhm.
is just that. Yeah, the thing is not on one of the people's property, but it's certainly affecting the value of their property. And they certainly
100%.
have some skin in that game.
I love being in the country. I used to have a farm in Mississippi that I bought a few years ago, and it was only 33 acres in the middle of nowhere. And that's why I loved it, because it was in the middle of nowhere. So I've since sold it. But if somebody comes and tells me I'm going to give my property up and have to allow this, it's not happening. And if I go to buy a property now and I find out there's a pipeline under it, I find out there's a carbon capture well underneath it at the bottom underneath our water aquifer, I'm not going to buy it. When other people like me go to look and they find out the same stuff, they're not going to buy it. They don't want the exposure. They don't want their rights taken from them. So that property value is going to just sink. And that's exactly what's happening. It's a shame. Government should not be involved in 90% of what they're involved in now. We have got to shrink government and reduce it out of the lives. Let the people. just like healthcare freedom. We have got to let the families raise their family. The government, we see what they do to families. We need to get them out of our families.
Exactly. Now tell us, you've mentioned Doge and you've mentioned government overreach. Where do you stand on tax reform, and where do you stand on the budget? What does that look like for you?
Lord, our budget is horrible. The United States, we're $37 trillion in the negative for the United States as a whole. We have got to rein in this ridiculous spending, specialized projects that, all this pork that's in the state budget, in the federal budget, because of who relationships. When somebody like me who is middle income and they get elected to position and they're a middle income person and 5 years later they're a multi-millionaire, there's problems somewhere. And I tell everybody, elect people you trust, but verify they're doing the right thing.
The Reagan doctrine. The Reagan doctrine,
the Reagan
right?
doctrine,
Dr.
trust
Wyatt?
but verify. Yes, sir, 100%. I love Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan's done turned over in his grave 100 times.
I told you you're the first guest we've ever had that complimented me on my Reagan sticker in the background. So
I love Ronald Reagan. He is one, he is just, I'm in awe of him. That's one person I wish I could have met. But we have got to rein in this government overreach. We have got to rein in this ridiculous spending on pet projects and pork in the state.
What's the answer?
The answer is holding people accountable for what they vote. And we've got to have people who get into just like me, if I get elected, when I get elected as a U.S. Senator, I work with the state Senate and the state representatives to get these bills passed through the state legislation. Then I also help the legislation get passed on the national level. So we can lower many different, insurance. Look at insurance here in Louisiana. There's no reason we should be paying the amount of insurance that we pay for homeowners insurance, car insurance, and we need to have reform on that, So there's so many things we need to tackle to rein in the budgetary expenses. But you look at some of this ridiculous pork that they
yeah. What are your thoughts, Dr. Wyatt, on this Louisiana Doge? We had a federal Doge, and then our governor created a Doge commission here in Louisiana. And I haven't heard too much about it. Senator Miguez, Senator Valerie Hodges, and several others are on that commission. It's headed up by a guy named Steve Orlandi, I believe. And I'm trying to figure out what's going on with Louisiana Doge.
Well, the problem is, in my opinion, and I've been investigating fraud, waste, and abuse for many years. I'm a certified fraud examiner. You have people assigned, and this is no disrespect to any of those persons you named who are on that. But number one, I haven't heard of anything that they've done. I haven't seen any action taken. So, but we've got to have take it out of the hands of the politicians and put experienced, certified fraud examiners who know what they're looking for, who know how to expose fraud, waste, and abuse, and put them on the task force and hire some people to go on the task force, start exposing this stuff, and the people who are supporting it. The problem is,
and maybe people who are not on the permanent state payroll. Don't you think that might enhance their credibility?
Yes, sir. That would be a great. How can you have politicians in charge of Doge when they're the ones who are mostly contributing to the Doge? I mean, to the fraud, waste, and abuse. I mean, that's just, they're not going to allow you to go in here and expose stuff. We need I support the governor in creating a Doge platform, but we need it to be a real platform. We need it to be a real committee. We need it to do real investigations and truly expose fraud, waste, and abuse. And that don't mean stacking it with a bunch of politicians, career politicians, and nothing against anybody personally, but a career politician is not going to attack Doge, because if they're representing oil and gas, or they're representing some other entity who has a special interest in that to make sure money gets cycled, they're not going to truly attack it. They're not going to truly address that situation.
And we might even need to bring people in from out of state who don't have the ties to all these people, because as you've said, the nepotism and the covering for your cousin and all that stuff,
my gosh,
is
the good old
deep.
Boys.
Yeah.
It's deep here in Louisiana, and it's not just Louisiana. It's everywhere we go. It's in every state. So we've got to take, number one. I don't mind an oversight. Have an oversight panel, but you've got to let the professionals do the true investigation. And if you're getting campaign donations, because look, all the politicians, what do they want? They're going to tell you what you want to hear, what you want to see, while their name is on the ballot. when their name's not on the ballot, you just about can't get in touch with them. They won't respond to emails, phone calls, text messages. Heck, you can go to their house, send them a dozen roses, and they're still not going to answer the door.
Yeah.
You know,
We have direct experience with that, and we don't particularly like it. What about Dr. Wyatt as a U.S. senator? If you're elected, you're going to be dealing not only with domestic affairs, you'll be dealing with international affairs. What are your thoughts on this war in Gaza? It's been going on now since 2023, I think Danielle has said. What should America's role in that be, and how do we end it?
you know, first off, we are not going to be able to be the ones to end it. They're going to have to come up with the solutions themselves and be able to negotiate the solutions. We've got to stop the overreach of the United States on, you know, I'm all about securing the nation and taking what's the best interest of our nation, but we have got to protect the America interest first. And I'm all about supporting Israel, you know, to a limit. We can't cut an open check. You know, we have to be defined in what we do, but they're going to have to be the ones to protect and work that out. The United States, the president, and we've seen it time and time again, the president cannot say, okay, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. The president's not God, so he can't mandate it, you know, and I'm all about protecting Israel, but we can't just cut an open checkbook to them either.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, there's another ongoing war that's been at the front of everybody's mind. It's been on the top of the news agenda lately as well. Obviously, President Trump met with President Putin on Friday, and he met with Zelensky and a large swath of the European leadership over the last couple of days. What's your take rather on how that's gone, and what are you hoping to see out of that?
Well, I would love to see a resolution, but we need to back out of the Ukraine. We need to stop. I don't support funneling them money and giving them money and supporting. We've got to let them take control. And I don't mind being to help negotiate the peace, but we can't ultimately. I don't want to see any boots on the ground for the United States Americans giving their lives in that. We have got to protect the interest of the United States, which means allowing them to work out. We can't negotiate and we can't be involved in every single war. We just can't do it. I mean, look at how Vietnam turned out. And Vietnam was 100% political, and we should have never been involved in the Vietnam War. And then when they did put the men and women on the ground, they didn't give them the support to do what they needed to do to protect the veterans of the Vietnam War, to do it, you know, to take our interest back. They just didn't do it. And the same thing with Ukraine. We've got to stay out of Ukraine. I honestly believe we need to pull out of Ukraine and stop. The government needs to stop being involved so much.
Yeah.
We've got to let them negotiate. I don't mind helping negotiate, but we can't just keep giving billions and billions and billions of dollars and putting boots on the ground and stuff like that. We've got to think of America first.
Yeah,
100.
I agree with you. And I think there's an argument to be made that almost every war, as far back as we can think, was a political war, and there wasn't
100.
just cause.
Right, 100%. You know, I remember I was in the Navy with Desert Storm, and I was on the USS Proteus, a submarine tender, and we were stationed in Guam. We were activated. We were within 12 hours of leaving to go to the Middle East, and then they stopped us. Uh, you know, they stood us down, and they started having, because I was on sub tender, so the nuclear submarines would come to us, and we would work on them. And I'll never forget when we were on ship and we're working on these different subs and stuff. And then the president said, you know, first President Bush said, look, you know, we've won. It's over, you know. And I'm like, oh, Lord. It's, you know, 100% political again, because we all knew eventually this was going to get worse. We all knew it.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to take that step, put boots on the ground, stop holding the military's hands and restricting them from doing what they need to do. You know, because you're costing military lives. You're talking about American daughters and sons and wives and husbands and family members who are going, and you're playing politics with them. I can't stand that.
Yeah.
Right? You're playing politics with people's lives. Absolutely.
You talk about a war that begs for justice. You know, my dad was a U.S. Marine, and he said that my dad wasn't in Vietnam. My dad was a Marine during Korea, but during Vietnam, he did know a lot of Marines who were there. And there came a point while they were there, they didn't even know why they were there anymore. And they basically were reduced to a point where they just looked at each other and said, we're just going to fight it for each other and for the Marine Corps. because that's really all we feel like we can rely on right now. And that's really what it came down to, Dr. Wyatt.
100% politics. They threw the men and women in Vietnam. They threw them over there without the support. Kept handcuffs on them where they couldn't do what they needed to do, couldn't protect themselves, couldn't protect the people they were there to protect, allegedly there to protect. And they had no say in it. My grandfather served in World War II and, in the Army. Gosh, I wish I could talk to him now about everything. I was so young, and didn't understand back then.
You remember your grandfather, though. You were 7 when he passed away.
I was 6.5 years old, about to be 7 when he passed away.
Isn't it amazing how you can have such a vivid memory of your grandfather because of the impact he had on you, yet you were so young when he passed away?
Oh my gosh, I do. I can remember his scent. I can remember his voice sitting with me on the steps of his house. Both of my sets of grandparents lived in the lower income in Shreveport, and I can remember sitting on both of them's house and on their steps going into their house and talking to him.
Wow.
And my grandfather he chewed Red Man tobacco. Mm-hmm. And he didn't want me to chew and he didn't want me to smoke or anything. I was like that. I was about 6 years old. He said, here, try a little of this. Because I always was picking at him, trying to get it. Oh my God.
Trying to get some of it?
I never wanted any more of it after that. He taught me that valuable lesson. But I remember, he used to take me to, buy me little small, you remember the 6-ounce Cokes and little ding dongs individually wrapped and honey bun. I may still eat a honey bun or two every now and then. But
no Red Man.
No Red Man. No Red Man. I tell everybody I don't drink, smoke, dip, or chew, or chase the wild women that do. I don't do any of that.
There you go.
Well, Dr. Wyatt.
Go ahead, Danielle. Sorry.
On election reform, sorry, Chris must be coming down with a cold.
I'm sorry,
I'm
y'all.
so sorry.
I have to apologize. I've had a chest cold, and I'm just sorry that I hardly ever get sick, and sometimes, occasionally I'll get one of these chest colds, and so I want to apologize for my sniffling and my coughing over here.
It happens to everyone. Yeah. But I wanted to touch on election reform. We've seen some recent statements out of the Trump administration investigating the machines and their vulnerabilities. We've seen definite statements from him about concerns about paper ballots, the fact that the 2020 election was stolen. Where do you stand on election reform, and what do you think needs to be done for people to have faith in our elections?
Well, here in Louisiana, when we vote, we don't get anything printed out to show exactly how we voted. How can we there's only so much, and as someone who does auditing, compliance, and investigations, I can tell you for a fact, anything that touches the internet can be hacked. I don't care what anybody tells you. There's always a way. Even if the voting machines are not connected to the internet at the time, they have to be connected at one time or another. Some of them do. But also the developers of these programs can build backdoors into these programs, allowing people to get into them. If you're anyone who works with the computer systems and building programs and writing code and stuff like that, which number one, I can't write code. I'm an investigator. I'm not a computer guru on that end of it. I am certified to investigate the computers. I have an NK certification where I can mirror a computer and a cell phone and stuff like that and do analysis of the hard drive and stuff and see what everybody did. But I cannot write code. But anybody who can write code they can and have the opportunity to create a backdoor into that program, including voting machines. What's the best scenario? Do people want to go back to 100% ballots? I don't think so. I think about the 2000 election with the Chads, hanging Chads and all that stuff and all that happened. And then people, just like the 2020 election, all the people running the ballots into boxes, and bringing that in. So what would be a best case scenario, I think? There are new machines out there, and the state of Georgia uses them now, to where you vote on an electronic machine. It does you a printout, and you have an auditing ability. Whichever way they decide to go, we need to have full auditing ability of these systems. If somebody comes to us and says, I voted for Democrat or Republican or whoever they voted for, and they show us a slip to who they voted for, we need to be able to track it and see.
But they don't get to keep the slip, Dr. Wyatt. They don't get to keep the slip.
They need to keep the slip. Then there should be two of them. Then if
They don't
that's the
get to
way
walk
it is.
out of there with anything.
Wow, that's crazy.
Well,
They need to.
and I think, based on what you were just saying, who is there to say that what the button you press on the machine could print out what you say, and then it could put a different answer in the
Right.
final tally, right? There's nothing to say that you voted the way you
Right.
did.
Definitely, and that's part of the problem. The most secure way, without, of course, it comes back to having people watch it. It comes back to actually setting and tracking the ballots, the paper ballots, to where they're numbered, they're serialized, they can have scans. You don't mail ballots to non-citizens. You make sure your voter rolls are cleaned up. That you don't have people 150 years old. I think I saw Moses was on one. I'm not sure.
There were
the
a
way
lot of
they have it.
Moses.
There was a lot of Moses.
Yeah, we had a lot of them.
I think I saw where Teddy Roosevelt voted, but back recently. So we've got to be able to track whichever way they go, whether it's electronic. I'm not a fan of electronic voting just because it can be manipulated so easy, and you can't. There's only so much auditing you can do. And then I hate to go back to a movie, but there's a saying in a movie, Will Smith starred in, of all people, but it said, "Who's going to audit or monitor the monitors?"
Yeah.
Because that's the system you get into with electronic stuff. They need, if they're going to do an electronic machine to where they're going to vote, we need to have a printout. The person needs to be able to keep a printout so they can keep how they vote. And then if it comes into question, they can turn that in and they can verify it. And so we need to have an audit trail, no matter what.
And I would think that if there are any machines involved, the code should be open source so that we actually know, somebody can actually read the code and know what's in there.
We have to keep it secure, definitely. When you get into, especially, and I do not think we need any machines who are made from a foreign national company. None at all, because that's inviting yourself up for setting up for disaster.
Yeah. You seem to be tracking very closely with President Trump's executive orders on all this.
Yes, sir. I am 100% in support of President Trump and what he's trying to do. And I'm not a politician, as you can tell. I say the truth. I tell you what I think, how I truly feel. But I'm very passionate about how I feel because I'm tired of seeing our country and our nation abused. There's only, you want to talk about the different things about President Trump. There's only a man and woman. There's not 29 genders. And I don't care if you put on a dress. I don't care if you have surgeries. If you're born a man, you're going to die a man. We need to stay out of the women's sports. We need to protect our young children. And as a person who has personally investigated child sexual abuse, the last thing we need to do is to have confused individuals around our children like that.
Yeah.
Not saying
Amen.
they're all, it's just natural.
Well said. Before you go, Dr. Wyatt, let me ask you one last question about the redistricting, because I got to get your opinion on this. Leo Fields, 2024, the Republicans caved in. 17 Republican senators joined all of the Senate Democrats and walked Cleo Fields back into the U.S. Congress with a district. Speaker Mike Johnson at the time said that was not something that needed to be done. There were other options. They could have fought for the current district. They could have drawn a district that wasn't a racial gerrymander. But the result of it is that we have someone in Washington, D.C. now who is a nemesis to President Trump. What are your thoughts on that redistricting, and should the legislature be in session right now trying to correct that?
Well, in my opinion, that should have never happened in the first place. I think it was a political swipe against Garrett Graves, who was truly serving the people and fighting for the people. From everything I've seen, I don't know anything he did wrong when he stood up to fight against anyone. It was a political swipe to remove him from his position and to give position to the Democratic Party against the people of Louisiana. Look, if a district shows that the majority is this one way or majority is another, that's fine. But you don't gerrymander a dang district, and this is what we're getting into, just to put in some of that DEI nonsense that they're doing, and we need to stop that. We need to remove it. And I truly believe that the U.S. Supreme Court is going to reverse that decision and we're going to get the district back. I truly believe that. I know they're hearing it in October, I believe. And I think we're going to be successful at that. But we need to stop it. It goes more than just on here in Louisiana. They're doing it all over the United States. Look at that idiot Governor Gavin Newsom. In California, destroying that whole state's gerrymandered. I don't know even how you even know where anybody lives. But we've got to take it back. Cleo Fields is such a disappointment, and I don't know him personally, but as a citizen of Louisiana, somebody who's supposed to be serving the public, he's a disappointment. And he should have never been in office. It was made just for him.
They didn't have to do it. They did
No,
not
they
have
didn't
to
have
do
to do
it.
it. No, they didn't have to do it, and we should be addressing it right now instead of our legislature should be addressing it and taking it up. Problem is, you got a political season where people don't want to be held accountable for their vote now, because now
That's
you're
right.
in a political season. So some of these people who come out and say they're 100% supporting Trump, they're really not supporting Trump. They're really supporting their own selves and their wallets and their retirements and their resume.
Yeah.
You know, my PhD is in human resource education that I earned at LSU Baton Rouge. You know, I know how to deal with people. I know how to handle people, and these people, you know, I think a lot of our leaders today need to have some education and some training and how to deal with people and truly represent, be honest, have some integrity, have some ethics. Well, let me tell you one thing about me. There's three things actually. I will never turn my back on Christ. Am I perfect? By no means, but I will never turn my back on Christ and the Lord and Savior. I will never violate my ethics and integrity for anyone, no matter what. If it means I have to lose an election, I'll just have to lose an election, because I'm not taking dirty money. I'm not going to go against the people of Louisiana. I'm going to stand up for them and stand up fiercely for them, and we're going to defend them.
Well, that's beautiful and so encouraging, Dr. Wyatt. If people are interested in learning more about your platform or getting you to come and speak to them, how can they do that?
Definitely. You can follow us on Facebook at SammyWyatt.com, and you can follow us on X at Dr. Sammy Wyatt.
Awesome.
And we are we've been very successful. We have over $4,500 donors from around the state, individual donors, and we have been very well received around the state. We're all over, from South Louisiana, north, south, east, and west. I'm all over, and thankfully been well received, because the people know I'm speaking the truth. You know, we're tired of, if you keep hiring career politicians, you keep putting them in place, and they're using this position to get to another position, then they don't need to be in this position. You know, if they've turned their back on the American people and the citizens of Louisiana, they don't need to be in there. So we need to elect someone, and I believe I am that person. I know I am that person, to truly stand up to the crime and corruption that's in our United States Senate and Congress. You know, I will be the one to stand up firmly against it.
Well, your voice is valuable, Dr. Wyatt, and you're definitely contributing to the conversation. Thank you for your service, not only in the military, but in law enforcement for many years. And thank you for taking the time to join us today. God bless you, sir.
Thank you so much, and I truly appreciate it. Keep us in your prayers. That's the best thing anyone can do. And of course, as you know, to run a campaign is expensive, so I would ask for anyone to consider to support me financially, and definitely would like their vote. But main thing, keep me in your prayers, because that's what's going to change everything.
Well, it was a pleasure, Dr. Wyatt. We look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you.
We're going to take a little break here and go for a word from our affiliate sponsors, but don't go anywhere, because when we get back, we have a little wrap up. I want to say a couple of words about Dr. Wyatt, and then there are some Louisiana issues that have come up that you do not want to miss. So stay tuned. Stay right where you are.
If you're looking to invest in physical precious metals or convert your 401k to a precious metals backed IRA, please consider making your investment with our trusted partner, Metal Stacks. Their prices regularly beat the big sites, and they have no credit card fees or minimums. Shipping is free for orders over $500. Just visit metalstacks.com/dwalker or get there from our website, freedomstate.us. If you're interested in the IRA conversion, drop me a message at Danielle@freedomstate.us, and I can get you connected with their white glove service.
Danielle, I have to apologize once again about this cold that I have, and I know it's been distracting, but I can't, I'm not just going to not participate. So thank you for bearing with me here. Thank you for bearing with me.
I was reviewing some of our shows from the last year, and when we had Dr. Sherry Tenpenny on, I was sick as a dog, and I looked like it. I absolutely looked like it.
I do remember that.
So my heart goes out to you, Chris.
I don't feel quite so bad right now. But
oh my gosh.
I wanted to tell you that, I find Dr. Wyatt very refreshing. He is just absolutely the perfect antidote to the normal politicians that you see, who that seem to say what you want to hear, but don't necessarily walk the walk. He strikes me as someone who truly will stand by what he says he believes in, and he's a refreshing voice. And regardless of how it turns out, I think his voice is valuable in our culture and our state and in this race.
Yeah, and we need more people like him to stand up. So I really appreciate what he brought to the table today. And I'm looking forward, Chris. I think as this race heats up, it'll be very exciting to hear from the candidates along the way. It's good to get the introduction, but I want to hear from them again as we get closer and closer to, I guess, what the start of it will be March of 26. So we're not that terribly far away from it. So hopefully
Yeah.
we'll get the opportunity to talk to him again, and we'll get the opportunity to talk to some of the other candidates as well.
Yeah, and we're going to get more specific as we go along, and we'll address the issues as they come up, because issues will come up during the campaign that have to be addressed. But one of the top issues right now in Louisiana, and one that just strikes me for its utter contrast, is President Trump, as recently as yesterday or 2 days ago, is not only sending out a tweet, but is on video talking about paper ballots and getting rid of machines because they cost a fraction of what the machines cost. We got to get rid of them. And as I said, he also has a tweet about it. And then on the other hand, at about the same time, you have our Secretary of State who's posting up all the dates where these electronic vendors are going to come in and do public demonstrations for certification. It's like, and she's saying that what she's doing is consistent with President Trump's vision and that they want her to be doing this. So I don't know what the truth is about all this, but I'm not sure that Nancy Landry is being completely forthright about whether or not she is in line with the vision of the Trump administration on election security. What do you say, Danielle?
Well, I think she's living on another planet or pretending to, because anybody who's paying an ounce of attention to President Trump understands where he stands on this issue by now. I mean, you can't get away from it. First, he told Jeff Landry to his face at a press conference in D.C., the signing of the Hyundai deal for Ascension Parish, that hand-marked paper ballots would save his state, our state, a whole lot of money. And he said it would cost 8% of what the machines would cost. Then he puts out some executive orders. That order of these two things may be flipped. Tulsi Gabbard, DNI, has come out and she said, these machines are very concerning. They're very ripe for fraud, and we have every reason to believe that the only way to move forward is paper ballots. The investigations are still ongoing. We expect them to come out from, I believe, Secretary Noem's office sometime soon, if I'm not mistaken. And then, Chris, why don't I play this video that you referenced? President Trump sitting down with Sean Hannity on Friday evening. The man doesn't sleep. I'm convinced Trump does not sleep.
4 days ago.
4 days ago. Let's just give this a listen and see if there's any way that you can misunderstand this. I don't know if you could be more clear.
So my question is this: how do you possibly reconcile what we just heard with Secretary of State Nancy Landry's ongoing push to invest $150 million in electronic voting machines? How do you reconcile those two positions, particularly when she's representing that the Trump administration endorses her agenda, endorses what she's trying to do right now? Something is amiss here. There's no question about that.
Yeah. Well, I put out a note this morning on Twitter with the dates that you sent me, Chris, for the machine testing or demonstrations. Maybe we could just mention that as well, that the Secretary of State has 5 or 6 vendors coming to Baton Rouge to demonstrate their machines, and they are all, save one, they are all on separate days. So you would have to make, I believe, 5 different trips to Baton Rouge. How many people does she think lives in Baton Rouge that cares about this issue? Does she expect every single person who cares about this issue to travel back and forth to Baton Rouge 5 times? I don't understand why this wouldn't be done as more like a job fair. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what the point of this is. I'm not really sure.
It's a public demonstration of the security of these various electronic voting systems. And my question is, how long does it take to demonstrate your voting system. If it takes an hour or a couple of hours to do, why would there not be, as you said, Danielle, multiple demonstrations in one day? So people who may live in Lafayette or in Monroe or in Alexandria can come and not have to travel back and forth. I mean, this is all for the benefit of the public, so we can have confidence in the security of our voting system. I don't understand why they're doing them all in separate days either. I don't get that. And I don't understand this just obtuseness when it comes to listening to what President Trump is saying. And he's saying it more frequently and more often, and even more emphatically recently. I don't understand it. The only response that our Secretary of State has made to President Trump's suggestions and his agenda is that we have a paper component that's going to be coming out of the machine, a paper component, and that will enable us to audit the votes. Well, first of all, the vast majority of voters, overwhelming majority, never look at a paper ballot that's spit out by a machine. They never look at it. They never study it. Most of them don't have any idea if it accurately reflects what they voted. Secondly, they don't get to leave, and she made this very clear, with their ballot. So they can't even check it later. So they vote, spit it out, they got to turn it in, and then they leave. Secondly, even if the paper ballot does accurately reflect what the vote in the machine was, the machines can still be manipulated later. Machines can still be manipulated to become inconsistent with what's on that piece of paper, and it's the machines that count the votes. So I don't understand how she says a paper component is any way reconcilable with President Trump's vision for a 100% paper ballot system.
Yeah, it doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. And the gaslighting around those of us who can clearly see that this is vulnerable at best. These systems are vulnerable at very best, sinister at what, I do believe they're sinister. If you think about what happened at their place of origin in Venezuela and you look at the state of Venezuela, that is the whole entire goal for what they wanted for the United States of America. If you're not willing to look at that as someone who's in charge of our elections, I don't even know what to say. Chris, would you talk for a minute about what calls to action you have up on the LCAG website right now related to the elections issues?
We have two calls to action on this. One is to follow and implement President Trump's executive orders on our election system.
And who does that go to?
That goes to the governor, goes to the Secretary of State. And also there's another one that's just on Louisiana voting systems generally, and how absolutely crazy it is for us to go forward with electronic voting computers when President Trump and every cybersecurity expert in the world who's reputable has said that they are acutely vulnerable and we need a secure hand-marked paper ballot system. So those are our two calls to action.
And who does the second one go to?
The same people.
Same people. Okay. And maybe I'll just mention as well that We the People Bayou community also has a call to action up that is separate from that, which is to President Trump, that says our elected officials, our elected officials are not listening to us. We have protested, we have pled, and they are not doing anything we ask. We're not being heard. Please intervene. And that's the same plea that I put out on Twitter today from the State of Freedom account, Chris, to DNI Gabbard and her office, because our officials are not listening to us. Our pleas have fallen on deaf ears. And when they have heard us, they've looked us in the face and said, there's nothing to see here. There's absolutely nothing to see here.
Yes. And if there's anybody on the national level, and I know that national figures watch our podcast, it's important for y'all to understand that Nancy Landry is not following President Trump's agenda. She is in the process of spending a ton of taxpayer money on electronic voting computers and machines. And by every indication we've gotten, that is inconsistent with President Trump's vision. And it's important that, the administration understand that.
Yeah, it is. Well, I guess, Chris, we can move on to the next topic that we had just for our wrap up this morning. And that is that Louisiana started deploying National Guard to DC on August 16th. They are deploying 135 troops to help secure the nation's capital. And you mentioned to me before the show that there are 4 other states along with Louisiana that are participating in that, sending troops. They're West Virginia, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Ohio. What do you think about that?
I think, assuming they're sending roughly the same number we are, there's probably about 500 state National Guard troops in DC. And I guess it's appropriate. President Trump has declared an emergency, a crime emergency in DC. From what I understand, there's already a massive difference on the streets in DC. And I don't have an issue with sending National Guard troops in a situation like this. Obviously, I don't want them to stay there permanently, but I think, I think it's probably appropriate. And I think that the citizens of, it's funny about Washington, D.C. right now, Danielle, the only people, it's not the minority citizens who live in D.C., it's not the hardworking people who get up every day and go to work in Washington, D.C. or in the surrounding area. None of those people are complaining about this action. The only people who are complaining are elitist liberals in Washington, D.C. Everybody else welcomes the presence for now. And I know it's going to be a temporary presence for President Trump, because I believe deep in his heart, President Trump does not like the idea of federal overreach, particularly when you look at everything that he's been through. I think he has an acute sensitivity to federal overreach. I think he's all about freedom and liberty and regional sovereignty. But in a situation like this, I think it's appropriate, because from what I've read and understand, Washington, D.C. was just, to say that it was unsafe is a gross understatement.
Well, I can tell you, I lived there for 14 years, Chris. And when I first moved there, a lot of the city was kind of off limits because it was very unsafe, and things got cleaned up. I lived in a very urban part of the city, and I felt perfectly safe. I've visited in recent years. I left when Mayor Bowser was mayor. I think she was mayor in 2016, 2017 timeframe. I don't know how she's still mayor.
Yeah.
When I have visited friends, it has felt unsafe. And I'll tell you why. It's because they have these young guys driving these, I don't even know what you call them. They're kind of like ATVs. They're these souped up, low riding cars that are just like 2-seaters, that are open air. They don't have, anyway, they're driving these at top speed in the areas where all the restaurants and the bars are. So it's very unsettling. You just feel like they could go get out of control at any time. It's very, and obviously they're very loud. They do that kind of motorcycle revving kind of stuff.
Do.
And so just to get those guys off the streets, those things cannot be street legal to start with. So I think clearing that out and making sure that the people who want to behave badly understand that it's not going to be tolerated, I think this will get it nipped in the bud. The other purpose I think this is serving, Chris, is the same thing that we're seeing here in Louisiana. People of Louisiana probably would be a lot more forgiving of Jeff Landry if they hadn't seen what Trump has been able to accomplish. And you and I have talked about this at length. The reason people are so upset with Jeff Landry, aside from the fact that he hasn't really followed through on his promises and that he does seem to be advancing an agenda that's contrary to the will of the people, those things aside, what we have heard from politicians so often is, oh, we just can't get it done. We just don't have the power. We don't have the support. Well, look at Trump. Look at Trump. Does he have that much support in terms of the legislature backing him up? Not really. I mean, the legislature hasn't done that much, but look how much he's accomplished and changed on the world stage and in our lives just in the last 6 months. So I think what he's accomplishing by bringing the federal troop or bringing the National Guard troops in, federalizing DC, cleaning that place up, making it a welcoming environment, a safe environment for people, is conveying to all of these other people who live in all of these other blue cities, guess what? They just don't want it safe over there. They want the criminals running roughshod over the good people, over the children, and making the playgrounds and making your streets unsafe. So I think this is accomplishing more than one end.
Very much so. The immediate end is that it's making people safer. And the broader end is that it's making people who would rather wallow in mediocrity, wallow in being far less than what and who they could be, accomplishing far less than what they should accomplish for the people. I'm talking about public leaders. It's making them look really bad because President Trump is doing exactly what they've been saying for so long can't be done. And that is why I think both Democrats and Republicans, many of them want to appear as though they support President Trump and appears though they're loyal to him. But many of them, if they ever had the opportunity, even now, to cut his legs out from under him, I guarantee you they would do it in a heartbeat. And there are as many Republicans who would do it as there are Democrats. And that's why I think it's so important that we continue to put a hedge of protection around President Trump and continue to pray that God supports his efforts and keeps him safe. Because I know that there are people in his immediate circle as we speak right now, Danielle, who want to dismantle him and who would wake up tomorrow morning if President Trump were rendered entirely ineffective, who would be happy. Even people who are extolling his virtue right now, because they don't want America first. They don't want individual excellence. They don't want to clean up their own mess. They don't want to stop enriching themselves. They don't want to return the government to the people. Deep down inside, they don't want any of that. And that's why I think President Trump needs to remain very wary about the people that he's surrounding himself with. And he has some very good people, but he has some around him who I have absolutely no confidence in either.
Yeah. Well, very well said, Chris. And I think I take to heart your point on keeping President Trump in prayer. Absolutely. Just switching gears to our last topic here. I know I've been very critical of Governor Landry, even just 5 seconds ago, but he has done something that I'm pretty excited about. He has established through an executive order a task force on public higher education reform, and he has named the chair to be State Superintendent Cade Brumley, who, as you know, Chris, does lower education, K through 12, and now he's going to have a voice in choosing the curriculum and kind of stating the frame for our public higher education institutions. I could not be happier about that. This is what Governor Landry said in a tweet. The state is charting a bold path to protect academic quality, expand choice, and ensure Louisiana's institutions answer to our state, not to distant bureaucracies. This leadership is strengthening trust in our schools, empowering families, and securing a future where education reflects Louisiana values and priorities. And I believe we understand this is also going to take on DEI in our higher education institutions.
Thank God for Cade Brumley. Danielle, I think he's an outstanding leader. I put him in the top 2 or 3 leaders in the state who have really achieved measurable progress within their respective spheres. I think he's an excellent leader, and I think that he is the right person for this job, particularly when it comes to higher education, where so many of our young students in college are indoctrinated into ideas that are so fundamentally anti-American. The only thing that I wish we had in place right now is HB 685. Emily Chenevier's bill that would have statutorily banned all of these concepts from our public institutions and our higher education. It's difficult for me to understand how Governor Landry right now suggests that he's ready to get all of this out of our colleges, including the DEI stuff, yet does not lend the weight of his office to pass a law that would have been a great aid to Cade Brumley in this big task he now has in front of him. I don't understand the disconnect there. You let a bill die on the Senate floor that would have directly helped Cade Brumley accomplish the goals he needs to accomplish here. I don't get it. I don't understand it. As far as
the proof will be in the pudding, Chris. Sorry for interrupting you, because this could be Doge 2.0, right? This could be LA Doge 2.0. There could definitely be the creation of a task force that has no teeth, that has no executive will behind it, that is just there to have something to point at. Secretary Linda McMahon, the education secretary, was here visiting with Cade Brumley, extolling the work that he's done, lauding the work he's done, calling Louisiana a leader in the transformation of education. So Governor Landry has a lot to gain by putting this together, but he will have a lot more to gain by making it successful. So I hope this isn't just another window dressing. I hope this is something that we will in 6 months' time be able to say, hey, look what Dr. Brumley's been allowed to do. Because you could also say the same about LA Doge, right? I think there's some good people on that task force, but I don't know that they've been empowered to act. And I think that's something we probably need to dig into.
His position, according to Governor Landry, is that he put that together and said, go to work, go do your work.
All right. Well, let's see how it
With
works.
little or no, parameters within which to operate. Supposedly, he unleashed them to go find the fraud, the waste, and the corruption. That's what supposedly is going on. I don't know whether that's the case or not, but I'll tell you, if there's anybody who can do real work, if he's allowed to do it, it's Cade Brumley, because he's not one that confuses motion with progress.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I have nothing but good things to say about him. So
Yeah.
very best wishes to Dr. Brumley. Our hats are off to you, and we, all eyes are going to be watching. So please give us some updates as things progress. Before we close out, I just want to mention to the audience that tomorrow, Wednesday at 10 a.m., I'll be on For the Love of Freedom with Dr. Evelyn Griffin. She's going to be talking about her event that's this weekend in Baker, Louisiana, all things wellness. There'll be vendors from all over the state. There'll be doctors, practitioners, people who believe in natural healing, who believe in new modalities and try and, I think, stay away from conventional medicine as much as possible. It's an excellent event. If you didn't attend last year, you absolutely should. We'll put the Facebook page where you can buy tickets to that in the show notes. She'll also be talking about her path to holistic medicine. She's an OBGYN, so hearing about that will be fascinating, I know. And then Thursday, also at 10, we'll be on with 107, and he will be talking to us about his perspective on chemtrails. He has a bit of a different take, and we'll be getting an update from him on the future of federal elections. I think he's got some insight into what should be coming down the pike, and so we look forward to that. I think it'll be a great interview. He's always riveting.
He absolutely is, and very knowledgeable. So that's going to be a great interview. I'm looking forward to that. Before we go, I want to encourage all of our listeners to support, subscribe, and share the State of Freedom. We are truly expanding the voice of freedom across the state of Louisiana and beyond, Danielle. I'm just stunned at the progress we've made so quickly. Advertise with us your ideas, your products, whatever you're doing. Give us a chance to advertise for you on the State of Freedom, because we will promote it and we will get the word out for you. But make sure that you tell everybody you know about the State of Freedom, because I can tell you right now, there's not a podcast in Louisiana that is singularly devoted to spreading the voice of Louisiana citizens across the state, spreading liberty and freedom everywhere, people whose voices have been forgotten in state government for way too long. I promise you, and we are faithful to you. So support us, donate to us, and also LACAG. Go on LACAG, do the calls to action, lacag.org, and become a member of LACAG as well, because we need your support. We are State of Freedom and LACAG are both listener-funded, member-funded grassroots organizations that accept no special interest money. And so we need you to help us continue to level this playing field, and we can fight and we can win this together, and we will.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. And God bless you. Thank you for all your work, Chris. And feel better, man.
I will. I wish Dr. Evelyn Griffin was here and she could give me some of the holistic medication for congestion. I guarantee it'd probably be gone in 5 minutes. But anyway, God bless you, Danielle, and we will reconvene soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Chris. Meet the world's first living, full-spectrum, certified organic CBDA hemp extract. Ness's hemp oil was extracted from seed to bottle without chemicals, solvents, or heavy metals, and it surpasses world-class standards for purity. This pure and powerful CBDA has been proven to reduce aches and pains, ease mental tension, and promote better sleep. To get yours today, visit the Shop Our Partners page at freedomstate.us. Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Be sure and check out the show notes for this episode. You can always go there and find the calls to action and resources mentioned in the show, and you can find out more information about our advertisers there as well. If you want to learn more about us or support our work, visit freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org. We'll see you next time. God bless.